What is going on, beautiful people? I am Lee Hammock, the diagnosed self-aware narcissist known as mental illness, and welcome to another episode of A Narcissist Explains. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about Alex Murdaugh. Is he a narcissist, sociopath, psychopath? What does Alex Murdaugh have going on? Like, so many people kept sending me DMs and messages and comments saying, hey, can you do a longer video about Alex Murdaugh? What do you think? He's a narcissist, toxic person, or whatever. So y'all know I'm not a therapist. I'm just a diagnosed narcissist that points out other people's toxic traits and behaviors. Alex Murdaugh is 1000% a toxic person at minimum. How can you not be toxic and unalive your wife and your son, your youngest son? That, y'all, I'm just telling you my mindset on it. So I didn't really get interested in the trial until people kept tagging me in it. And then I started watching a couple of videos. I was like, oh, damn. I was like, he got something going on. Like, he got some wildness going on in his mind. Because he absolutely did, y'all. That man did so much toxic stuff. Like, one of the main things that I saw that kind of led me down a rabbit hole of toxicity in his life is that when the prosecutor said no one really knew who Alex was. No one really knew who he was. Like, not his brother, not his family members. No one really knew who he was. He had an opioid addiction. He was stealing money from his clients for over a decade. He was, doing so much stuff that nobody had any idea. Everybody thought that he was this like prestigious lawyer that comes from a family of prosecutors or lawyers or whatever. Nobody had any idea he was like scamming people and stealing money and of course the unalivement of his that he got convicted of doing of his wife and his son. That is wildness, y'all. And he was just lying on the stand, lying from the very beginning. You know what I mean? So one thing that I will say that I think Alex Murdaugh told the truth about is his paranoid thoughts. Yeah, he was lying his damn toxic narcissistic ass off. But one thing that he was truthful about that I believe is the paranoid thoughts. Because I've been clinically diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, and I took very, very recently. I took two psychological evaluations, and they came back that I was super high on paranoia. You know what I mean? I was super high on paranoia, and I spiked high on schizophrenia as well. I don't have paranoid personality disorder. I don't have schizophrenia. It's just, I have schizophrenic traits or whatever. But the paranoia was super high. And the paranoia, my therapist said, it comes from general anxiety. Like, you have super high levels of anxiety. So that's causes you to be paranoid. So I think that Alex Murdaugh is at minimum very narcissistic, toxic as hell. And that paranoia part was true. With that being said, the paranoid thoughts he kept saying he having, I do believe he was having paranoid thoughts because the world was caving in on him. All his dirty laundry was about to be thrown out in the street. All his skeletons, will come out of the closet and be dancing. His skeletons was gonna come out of the closet and start line dancing down there in South Carolina. Like, all this, every bad thing he had done was about to be put on Front Street. And narcissistic people like him cannot handle shame. I'm pretty sure the prosecutor was leading into him being a narcissist because he kept saying it. He was just like, Alex is one of those people that cannot deal with shame. He's like, shame is just insurmountable to him. Shame, he cannot take shame. He cannot handle shame. Just like most narcissistic people try to avoid shame at all costs. Shame is just, it hurts y'all. It's painful. And the paranoia, he doesn't want to be exposed for who he really is. So the paranoia kicks in. The paranoia makes him think all these shameful things are going to happen to him. So guess what? Instead of just dealing with the shame of his financial crimes and probably going to jail for the rest of his life, he decided to take the life of his wife and his son. And he had been planning it for a long time, y'all. This wasn't just a spur of the moment thing. He had set those guns down there. He didn't just like, damn, let me unalive Paul and Maggie. He went down there, set those guns down there, and blasted them. 2 guns and apparently like a blue blue tarp, blue poncho, blue raincoat or whatever. So he planned on doing it. The paranoia kicked in, and the opioid addiction might have had something to do with it as well. You know what I mean? He said he'd been popping pills. He had some pills in his pocket when the police arrived. That's according to him, allegedly. You know what I mean? But yeah, he had some toxic narcissistic stuff going on, y'all. And that paranoia kicked in and made him think that he's gonna get shame brought upon him. And you know what? He concocted this story. He's shot Paul, then he shot Maggie, and then he tried to and he got caught up. He started lying immediately. He started lying immediately, out. The pathological liar. Just like a lot of narcissistic, toxic people are, compulsive, pathological liars. Just lying for the sake of lying. But now he was lying to cover his own ass to save his, to try to save himself from, to try to avoid shame. So he's trying to avoid shame, cover his own ass, and do all this other stuff. And in the same breath, took his wife and his son's life. I know a lot of people are going to ask. I saw this in the comment section of some of the shorter videos I did. They were like, "Well, how does he avoid shame, but unalive his wife and his son, which brings him more shame?" He didn't anticipate on getting caught. He didn't think he was going to get caught for taking the life of his wife and the son of Paul and Maggie. He didn't think he was going to get caught. And he told the police, he's like, he told somebody, whoever did this had been planning this for a long time. And he got convicted of doing it. So he was telling himself, narcissistic, toxic people telling themselves all the time. He's like, whoever did it must have been very angry and had been planning it for a long time. I'm pretty sure that he was angry at his son because his son, they got into that boating accident and took the life of a young lady, and he was getting sued for that. And they was going to go through all the family finances because Alex had got attached to it. You know what I mean? He was attached to everything. So they tied all the finances together and stuff like that. So he was like, in order to distract stuff, he took the life of his wife and his son. To distract people from the financial crimes. They said the partner or the CFO of his law firm had approached him the morning of the unalivings and asked him about the money. It's like, we have reason to believe that you got a check paid directly to you, and I need you to prove to me that it didn't happen that way. And instead of just facing his own tune, he decided to go take the life of his wife and his son to distract everybody from it. Because once he did that, everybody's like, "Oh, he's grieving. Let's not go after him for this money," you know. But then eventually he ended up getting fired from the law firm and tried to hide. Like, this man had a plot to unalive him. He hired somebody to unalive him so his remaining son could get his life insurance policy. And then that came out in court. So he was stealing money, set up his own unaliving, his own, and then took the life of his wife and son. But in court, like you said, the dog kennel video that everybody saw when he said it wasn't his voice. He said, "I left way earlier." But then the dog kennel video came out and showed that, at 8:44 p.m., he was still down at the dog kennels. And they were saying, like, "Hey, look, the unalivings happened between 8:49 and like 9 o'clock. Or like they started happening at 8:50 at the latest, because both people's phones went offline. Like Maggie and Paul's phone went offline within like a minute or two of each other. So he had 6. So he's saying he was there, and he came out in court and said, "Yeah, I've been lying the whole time. The paranoid thoughts made me lie to everybody, and this, that, and I was there at 8:44 p.m. But I left right after that, and then the unalivings happened when I left." What? That man was lying his ass off. He wanted y'all to believe that, hey, I'm a liar. I stole some money. I did all this stuff, but I'm not an unaliver. I did not take the life of my son, Paul, and my wife, Maggie. That Paul stuff is very, very important, because he never said the words. He never, ever said Paul until he got on the stand to testify. The prosecutor was like, "Who the hell is Paul?" And Roro. He was like, "Oh, Paul is the name we gave Paul. That's what I called him. I called him Paul. And I called Roro is Rowan, whatever his friend's name was." Those are the nicknames. Like, that is so manipulative. And the prosecutor saw right through that. He's like, "You trying to use these little kid nicknames, these little baby nicknames, these little endearing nicknames to try to sway the jury. Like, oh, he calls Paul. So there's no way he would have took his life. He's a great father. He wouldn't do that. He calls him Paul. He wouldn't do that." He was being intentional, y'all, with that. Being very, very intentional. His body language. The prosecutor asked him, like, "Did you take the life of Maggie or Paul?" He said, "No, I did not." Shaking his head, yes, he said, "No, I did not." His body was telling on him. That man's body was telling on him. I tell this to people all the time. Narcissistic people, toxic ass people, they were telling themselves all the time, and you just listen to them. I lied about the time I was there because I didn't know what my paranoid thoughts had kicked in, and then I came back and found them. That man rode up on his son and his wife, allegedly, on the ground, both shot, and within 19 seconds. He said, "I ran over there and checked their pulse or whatever. I turned them over, checked their pulse, and you check Paul's pulse, his brain's laying on the ground, And then Maggie, she got some gunshot wounds to her dome too. So it's like, You checked their post, but you called 911 19 seconds in. Yo, that was a crazy, it was an insane case. It really, really was. And that man deserves to go to jail. And somehow people was like, everybody's like, there's no way he can convince people that he didn't do it. Now, there's still people in my comment sections of my previous videos saying that, no, the prosecutors didn't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt because they didn't prove this, they didn't prove that. Like, y'all, that's why. He knows it works. He was charismatic. They said he was funny. They said he would just get you to believe him and get you, like narcissistic people, get you to trust him. He was trusting. He got people to trust him and taking money from his old housekeeper that lost her nanny or whatever that lost her life. You know, taking money from disabled clients. He was a horrible person. Horrible. But he wanted y'all to believe he did all this other horrible stuff. But taking somebody's life, especially the life of his wife and his son, he wouldn't do that. I'm just saying, y'all, that man has lost. He lost his mind and he snapped. You know what I mean? He might have had a psychotic break from the paranoid thoughts, because that does happen. When you reach the precipice, when you reach the edge of the cliff, sometimes you have no choice but to jump off. When you jump off that mental cliff, the psychosis kicks in and you start doing craziness. So imagine like you were Paul or Maggie, you in there putting up the ducks or the chickens or whatever. You turn around, you turn around, look at your dad. He has a blue raincoat on and a shotgun pointed at you. He just pulls the trigger, shoot you in your chest. You don't pass away, so you walk towards the door. You stunned. You don't know what the hell happened. You walk out there. The last thing you see is your dad. The last thing that happens, your dad blows your damn head off. Like, come on now. And then the wife comes over there and sees it. She looks directly at her husband. He probably raincoat on, hit her with a different gun. Then he executed her, got her in the back of the head too. I'm like, damn, boy. So he probably had a psychotic break as well. But they can argue that, they can fight that, they can say that. But like at the end of the day, people have to, like I said, at the end of the day, he was at minimum a very, very toxic person. I'm not trying to diagnose him, y'all. You can't diagnose him. I'm not trying to diagnose that man. But you cannot look at me and just say that any of that is believable. You know what I mean? It was just wildness, y'all. He did a whole bunch of just crazy wildness. He been lying to his clients and his people for years, for decades. Nobody knew who this man was. Stealing money, all this stuff. And they said somebody said, I'm not saying this is true, but I saw somebody in the comment section like, well, his wife had talked to the divorce lawyer and this is that. I couldn't find any evidence on that. I didn't really look that hard, but if y'all know evidence of his wife talking to the divorce lawyer, let me know. What are y'all thoughts? Y'all think he was toxic, narcissistic? Let me know in the comment section. Anyways, y'all, thank y'all for tuning in to another episode. Like and subscribe for more, and as always, mental illness is out. Peace.